Tris Speaker might be the most forgotten legend in the history of baseball. If you were to ask a crowd of baseball fans the question, who is the greatest center fielder of all time? What names would you hear? Willie Mays, Mike Trout, Ken Griffey Jr., Ty Cobb, Mickey Mantle, and so many others. There's always one name that gets left out: Tris Speaker. Unfortunately, there aren't many people who truly know the legacy of Tris Speaker. In fact, I really didn't know much about him before the making of this video. I have heard his name a few times throughout baseball documentaries, such as the Ken Burns baseball documentary, but other than that, I didn't know much about Tris Speaker. Today, I will be sharing with you the legacy of one of the greatest baseball players ever. Tristram Edgar Speaker was born on April 4th, 1888 in Hubbard, Texas. As a young kid, Speaker broke his arm after he fell from a horse, which ultimately forced him to throw lefty. In 1905, Tris Speaker played a year of college baseball for Fort Worth Polytechnic Institute. During this time, while playing football, he almost had his arm amputated, according to newspaper reports. Speaker never refuted the statement. In 1906, Speaker's talent drew the interest of Doak Roberts, owner of the Cleburne Railroaders of the Texas League. Once joining the team, Speaker had a short stint as a pitcher before converting to an outfielder to replace a Cleburne player who had been hit in the head with a pitch. Speaker batted .318 for the Railroaders that season. Roberts sold off Tris Speaker to the Boston Americans following the season. Speaker's mother was opposed to him playing in the big leagues, as it reminded her of slavery, and she would have rather her son enter the cattle or oil business. Speaker ended up going to the big leagues anyway, and in 7 games for the Americans in 1907, he tallied a .158 average in 19 at-bats. The very next year is when the team rebranded and became the Boston Red Sox. The same year the team rebranded, they gave away Speaker to the Little Rock Travelers of the Southern League in exchange for use of their facilities for spring training. What a weird trade. Not quite as weird as the Dave Winfield trade where he was traded for dinner. Let's just say that's a story for another day. After batting .350 for the Travelers, the Red Sox decided they would repurchase Speaker's contract. And in 116 at-bats, Speaker was subpar, putting up a .224 average in 116 at-bats. Once 1909 hit, Tris Speaker became the starting center fielder for the Red Sox. By the time Tris Speaker turned 22, he was already one of the best center fielders in the game, a player highly regarded for both his work at the plate and in the field. Tris Speaker was well known for his defensive positioning, as he tended to play a very shallow center field, which allowed him to lead the AL in assists 8 times. He is the all-time leader in assists among center fielders with 450. Here's what teammate at the time, Smokey Joe Wood, had to say about Tris Speaker's defensive ability. Quote, "At the crack of the bat, he'd be off with his back to the infield, and then he'd turn and glance over his shoulder at the last minute and catch the ball so easy, it looked like there was nothing to it. Nothing at all." Tris Speaker in 1909 posted a .309 batting average, tallying 168 hits, only 7 home runs, but a very respectable .805 OPS. The offense only went up from there, as Tris Speaker in the next 3 seasons improved his OPS, going from an .805 OPS in 1909 to a 1,031 OPS in 1912, when he won the MVP. This was arguably the best year of his career. He beat out 2 of the best pitchers in baseball history, Walter Johnson and Ed Walsh, for the MVP award. In that MVP season, he had a league-leading .464 on-base percentage, along with a league-leading 10 home runs. Remember, this was before home runs were cool, and Speaker also led the league in doubles with 53. Along with winning the MVP award in 1912, Speaker also led the Red Sox to a World Series championship. Tris Speaker averaged a .928 OPS for his career, so one could expect lots of extra base hits from him. Tris Speaker led the league in doubles 8 times. In fact, Tris Speaker is the all-time doubles leader, with 792. Just 3 years later, Tris Speaker and the Red Sox won yet another World Series. Following the championship run, Red Sox president Joseph Lannon wanted Speaker to take a pay cut from about $15,000 to about $9,000 because of his drop in batting average. And by, quote, drop in batting average, he meant going from an elite .338 average to a very disappointing .322 average. But Joseph Lannon ended up deciding to trade Speaker away to the Indians at the start of the 1916 season because of this contract dispute. In Speaker's first season with the Indians, he led the AL in these major offensive categories: hits, doubles, batting average, on-base percentage, and slugging percentage. Not too shabby, especially since he had taken a step back the year prior. Not only did Tris Speaker just absolutely dominate the league in 1916, he dethroned Ty Cobb, who had led the league in average every year since 1910. Speaker took over as player manager for the Indians during the 1919 season, and he held down this position until his final season in Cleveland in 1926. In his first full season as player manager in 1920, Speaker reached his third World Series as the Indians won the series over the Brooklyn Dodgers. Not bad for your first season as a manager. During this championship season, Tris Speaker introduced the platoon system, which attempted to match right-handed batters to left-handed pitchers and vice versa. You see a lot of this in modern-day baseball, a prime example being on the Los Angeles Dodgers. Turns out this year wasn't a fluke for Tris Speaker, managerial-wise. In 8 years managing, the Indians posted a .543 winning percentage. I'd say that's pretty good. In 1921 and 1922, Tris Speaker led the league's outfielders in fielding percentage. A few years later, on May 17, 1925, Speaker became the 5th member of the 3,000 hit club when he hit a single off of pitcher Tom Zachary of the Washington Senators. In 1926, American League President Ban Johnson asked Detroit manager Ty Cobb and Tris Speaker to resign their posts after a scandal broke out. The scandal involved pitcher Dutch Leonard, Ty Cobb, and Tris Speaker. Dutch Leonard claimed that Speaker and Cobb were throwing and wagering on games. There was pretty significant evidence to support Leonard's claim. However, Speaker was not named in the letter written by Cobb and former Joe Wood to Dutch Leonard. Even so, Speaker took initiative and resigned, and ultimately this led to him leaving the Indians altogether. The scandal is a very confusing one, especially since Leonard refused to appear at the hearing in January of 1927 in order to discuss his accusations. Speaker was productive even into his later years in Cleveland, recording career bests in average and on-base percentage at 37 years old. He finished off his playing career with a year in Washington and a year in Philadelphia. He retired at age 40 following the 1928 season. Tris Speaker finished his career with 134.2 WAR, 9th all-time, 3,514 hits, 5th all-time, a career .354 batting average, 432 stolen bases, a batting title, 3-time World Series champion, the all-time leader in doubles, outfield assists, and double plays, and he is the last player to record 200 triples for their career. Tris Speaker has a legitimate case to be classified as a top 10 baseball player in the history of the game. After his playing career, Tris Speaker continued his managing for a little while longer. From 1929 to 1930, Speaker managed the Newark Bears of the International League. He also appeared as a player for the Bears in 59 games. After resigning from managing the Bears, Speaker became a part owner of the Kansas City Blues for just 3 years. The year after he sold his share in the team, Tris Speaker was elected to the Baseball Hall of Fame in 1937. After his playing and managing days, Speaker became an entrepreneur and salesman. By 1937, Speaker had opened a wholesale liquor business and worked as a state sales representative for a steel company. Speaker eventually became involved with Cleveland's boxing commission between 1936 and 1943. In 1937, Speaker sustained a 16-foot fall while working on a flower box near a second-story window at his home. He underwent facial surgery to repair some of the damage from the fall. He had a skull fracture, a broken arm, and some internal injuries as a result. Luckily, Speaker recovered. In 1939, Speaker became president of the National Professional Indoor Baseball League. Speaker was also involved in his community, as he was the vice president of a Cleveland Society for Helping Children in Rehabilitation Centers. In 1942, Speaker overcame a rough case of pneumonia. Just 5 years later, in 1947, Speaker returned to baseball for owner Bill Veeck and the Cleveland Indians. He remained in advisory, coaching, and scouting roles for the Indians until his death in 1958 when he suffered a heart attack. Tris Speaker's legacy is one that more people should know. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, make sure to hit that like button and consider subscribing if you're new. We'll see you guys in the next video. Later.
I'm not having any fun.